Hi, concluding now for Cubs and Culture on January 17th, 2018, about Life of Pi. So let me first very quickly talk about the first act. The first act is setting up Pi's religious faith. His father is something of an atheist or secularist, and there's a couple of conversations here and there about should we believe in belief, but the main sort of thing is when he's coming to, as he says, know God. It's in three different guises. So he ends up, because he's from India, he ends up being Hindu, and then because of a deer with his brother, he ends up going to a Catholic church, and he's drawn to sort of the story of Christ. So he ends up becoming a Catholic or a Christian, and then because of the joy that the excuse me, Muslim or Islamic services provide, he also becomes a Muslim in the sense that he starts doing the 5 prayers a day and everything like that. So, and then in the second act, when he's talking about religious faith, it is sort of not specified, so it's sort of a universal, just religion, just believing in belief. So the first act by itself kind of settles on being having a sort of pluralistic, all religion is sort of pointing at the same thing view, like universalism, but it's not aggressively so. It only becomes aggressively so after you realize what they do in the fucking third act. Okay, so in the third act, this is where the major change between the novel and the book happened. So let me just say the general and third act, and I'll point out what the change is. So in the movie, and in the book, it's actually in retrospective. So it's Pi telling his story to the author of the book, and then I think is the man's name. Whatever, doesn't really matter. The author of the book. And in the third act, he's in the hospital, and these 2 Japanese insurance adjusters who are coming to figure out what the hell happened with the ship, and he tells the story with the tiger and the island. Let's call it the island story, or the animal story, the one with the animals. And at the end in the book, the insurance adjusters say, "We don't really believe you." And in the movie, it's sort of the author says, "I don't really believe you." In either case, he ends up telling a second story, and in this story, his mother, a sailor, and a cook end up surviving, and the cook ends up killing the sailor and Pi's mother, and Pi ends up killing the cook. Okay, so if you follow the logic of like the order of deaths, it's obviously a parallel between the tiger's Pi, the cook is the hyena, the mother's the orangutan, and the zebra is the sailor, etc. So at this point, after he tells this story in the novel, he asked the insurance adjusters, "Do you believe me now?" And they said, "Yes." Is that basically, is that the sort of story they wanted? Like, not really. Like, okay, yeah, we believe you. It's more believable. Then he asked the insurance instructors, "So which story do you prefer? The one with the animals or the one with the humans?" And they say, "Well, we prefer the ones with the animals." In the movie, this scene is moved to the author. So he puts the question to the author: which story do you prefer? Do you prefer the one with the animals, or do you prefer the one with the humans? So of course, because the one with the humans is this dark tale of like sort of Hobbesian state of nature, killing people, and a young kid has to watch his mother get killed, and he then commits, well, it's not murder because state of nature, but kills someone that you are supposed to say, and as the author says, And as the insurance people say in the book, we prefer the one with the animals. To which Pi in the movie responds, and so it is with God. First of all, fuck you. Second of all, fuck you so much. Okay. Third of all, so that's what I mean where it becomes an ontological argument, because we're supposed to say the one with the animals, which is probably here's the thing. Both stories have the same beginning and conclusion, and we can't really say which one is true, which is Pi's family. The ship goes down for mysterious reasons. Pi suffers and loses his family, and then he ends up in Mexico. And for either story, that's the through line. So the sort of details of the story, whether it's the animal stories or the human story, it becomes a question of not factually what happened, because it doesn't factually what happened is the same for beginning and end as it is in both stories. What matters is the aesthetical value, the joy of the animal story being more aesthetically compelling, or has more of a sort of a harsh beauty to it. So because we feel more sort of this aura's joy at the animal story, therefore joy exists and God must exist to fulfill that expectation of joy. It's such bullshit. It's too clever for its own good, and it makes the entire second act of the movie basically a parlor game of manipulating the audience's emotions to get them into this position where we have to confront, where we have to pick between sort of our aesthetical values versus our sort of reasonable capacities. So again, fuck you. Now here's the thing. I think this problem is in both the novel and in the movie. The novel is slightly easier to read. That Pi at this point is sort of crazy, because that it's sort of a psychological story he created in his head because of dealing with having to see his mother killed or whatever. And it happens right after. The thing is, in the movie, it's later on with the author, so it doesn't feel as sort of psychologically distressed. And here's the thing, and this is why I think it's more ambiguous in the movie than actually in the book, in the sense of which story is true, which makes the fucking ontological argument supposed to work better, but is Richard Parker the tiger in the animal story says he goes off in the jungle and he doesn't turn around. Now, Old Pi is shown saying this part, and the actor who's playing Old Pi gets really, really teary and upset. So it really comes across as if he's telling the truth at this point. The human story, where it's Pi telling about his mother being killed, is told by young Pi, and he looks really upset, so it seems like he's telling the truth. Okay? So you have two Pis at two different points in the story, and they both seem to be telling the truth at the sort of the same, about the, one's telling the factual story truthfully and one's telling the Richard Parker. Which story is factual? There's evidence within the movie that both of them, or that either one could be. And that Old Pi doesn't seem to be lying at any point in the film, and young Pi doesn't seem to be lying when he's telling the animal story. Now, I think this change of shifting it from the hospital to the author scenes as a result of it becoming a book to a film, because the whole reason why it's a framed story is to get us thinking of story and then possibly Pi being an unreliable narrator. Excuse me. Now, you can do that in a novel easily, where you just put an author's note. Basically, what happens, he puts an author note, and explains the sort of, how stories how stories can come alive, and I heard the story, blah, blah. It's just framing the story, and then for the most part, it's weeded out as you go along. The thing is, if you do that in the movie, you have to film the guy talk, but here's the thing. The result of the author's efforts in front of you holding a book. The author's a character in the movie, so you need a reason for him to be in the movie. And so the screenwriter made a very natural decision to give him the question, to give the author the question answer. Which story do you prefer, the animals or the human story? So again, this is why I liked teaching this movie, is because that's a pretty massive difference, because on the movie it becomes more ambiguous, where in the film, in the book, it becomes easier to just sort of read an atheistic interpretation of the story. But it's also sort of a natural consequence of filming it, because you need to frame it as a guy telling it to telling it to an author to get the unreliable narrator aspect. But then in the film, you need the author to be doing something, hence why he's put the questions to him. So the third act fucks this movie up, because it basically empties everything out about everything in the center, all the emotions, all the sort of joy or absurdity or anything you want to put into it. It's all in service for this fucking bullshit argument about the nature of the existence of God that basically boils down to C.S. Lewis's joy argument. So fuck you, Life of Pi. Fuck you. I hate this movie. It was a great movie for 95%, and the last 5% fucks it up. Damn it. Okay, see you later.